Here is the Guggenheim Museum in Bilbao, Spain. The architect is Frank Gehry. This is the exterior on top and then the interior below. It was made between 1993 and 1997. The majority of the materials, especially on the outside, is titanium. But there's also limestone on the inside, glass, and steel. So the idea that I talked about in the historical context was the deconstructivist architecture. And this is more theory based than really high tech. And it emerges in the 1990s. The purpose of it is to deliberately disturb the traditional architectural assumptions about harmony, unity, and stability to create a decentered, a skewed, and distorted designs. The aesthetics that were around during the Russian suprematists and the constructivists is an inspiration for Frank Gehry, along with the principles of deconstructivism itself. It views meaning as intertextual and a product of one's own relationship to the texts. Deconstructive architecture plays with meaning by mixing diverse architectural forms, features, and context, and it is decentered in its diffusion as well as in its perceived instability, both meaning and form. So Gehry is considered a revolutionary architect. He revolutionized architecture's aesthetics, the social and cultural role of architecture, and the relationship architecture has to the city. His pioneering work in digital technologies is what set in motion the practices that are adopted by the construction industry today. He is very interested in a building's means of expression, a process that has brought with it new methods of design and technology, as well as an innovative approach to materials. So this is in northern Spain, in Bilbao, it's still a port city. But that port city had pretty much fallen into disrepair. So the Guggenheim Foundation is going to hire Frank Gehry to build a museum. And with that museum, we're going to see this beautiful change to the city of Bilbao. It's surrounded by avenues and squares. The museum is located in a newly developed area of the city, leaving its industrial past behind. The museum plaza and main entrance lie in direct line with Calle La Paragire, one of the main streets running diagonally through Bilbao. It extends the city center right up to the museum's door. Gehry creates an unstable and deconstructivist building masses that extends far beyond what it should. His use of a software tool called CATIA, CATIA, all caps, is used in the aeronautics and automobile industries, and it allows the digital manipulation of 3D representations, which enabled him to create a powerfully organic sculptural structure. Essentially, the software digitized points on the edges, surfaces, and intersections of Gehry's hand-built models to construct on-screen models. Then that can be manipulated in a manner somewhat the same way of animated cartoons. It has a complex steel skeleton, and then it's covered with a shell of silvery titanium that shimmers gold or silver depending on the time of day and weather conditions. It's constructed of titanium, limestone, and glass. The seemingly random curves of the exterior are designed to catch the light and react to the sun and weather. The fixing clips, to make that shallow dent in each of those like titanium tiles, they use fixing clips to create that shallow dent. And the titanium tiles are 0.38 millimeters. And what that does is it makes the surface appear to ripple in the changing light, giving an extraordinary iridescence to the overall composition. From different angles, it can look like a ship, or even like a ship. I'm sorry, or a living organism. And it is located in an industrial port city that was very popular and had fallen into disrepair in the 70s. So that ship reference is important to the shape. The highest part of the museum is crowned by a large skylight, and that's in the shape of a metal flower covering the atrium, one of the building's most characteristic features. It is notoriously difficult, though. I mean, this is a museum, but it's like almost impossible to display art inside, which is similar to Frank Lloyd Wright's New York Guggenheim, because there's no like straight walls. They're all, because of the curvilinear lines, it's hard to actually hang paintings on there. With over 100 exhibitions and more than 10 million visitors to its museum every year, the Frank Gehry's Guggenheim Museum in Bilbao not only changed the way that architects and people think about museums, but it also boosted Bilbao's economy with astounding success. People now are coming to Bilbao for tourist reasons, not just to go to the museum, because they totally revamped the city and made it, but this is one of the main attractions in Bilbao. In fact, the phenomenon of the city's transformation that followed the construction of this significant piece of architecture is now referred to as the Bilbao effect, and that leads to other cities that are on the verge of dilapidation to want to try to get architects to build museums such as the Guggenheim. 20 years later, the museum still continues to challenge assumptions about the connection between art and architecture today, and that's what this does. Like, is this a piece of architecture? Is it art? Is it both? And I think that's what Frank Gehry was going. We're really lucky to be able to see a Frank Gehry in person. Here's another view of the museum, the Bilbao, and we have the spider that's right here. This is one of the sculptures. There's a lot of sculptural elements outside of the museum as well, so people come to visit the outside of the museum too. Anyway, I was mentioning that the Walt Disney Philharmonic Center in Los Angeles is a Frank Gehry piece, and it looks really similar to this, but the way that one was designed was for acoustics, for the purpose of playing music, whereas this one is for a museum. But if you do go to the Broad or the Modern Art Museum in LA, you'll go right past the Gehry's Walt Disney Center. But here is the Guggenheim in Spain.